KoshienCast, the world's #1 Fukuwara Mask fan club. My name is Matt, and joining me today is a very special guest, Matt.
That's me.
Hey, welcome on, Matt. Always glad to have you on.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I am, like you mentioned at the top, surprisingly excited to talk about Tiger Mask.
We are both very excited about Tiger Mask. We will get more into that later. Yeah. But as of right now, we are on week 11 of the winter season, covering all sports anime from the 19th to the 12th of March.
Or the 25th.
Right, the 25th. That would be the correct...
that would be the correct... backwards in time.
It says 25 right in front of me.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, so a couple of announcements. So March Comes In Like a Lion wrapped up last week. We are going to be getting a review episode out there soon. We got Teekyu. We just finished up that. We just finished up Usakame, which was the last spin-off season of that. So we're going to be doing a Teekyu soon. And then Minami Kamakura ended this week, and we're going to bring ourselves the review of that one.
Yeah. It might be curt, but
it might be curt and tight, much like the Long Riders review, but it will be coming.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I'd just like to dive right into Yowapeda, if that's cool by you.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. So this week on Yowapeda, this was episode 11. So we get the wrap-up to the race between Danchiku, Kobaragi, Sugimoto, and Sadatoki. Basically, there's this very tight sprint to the finish. Eventually, Kobaragi breaks away, and he races on ahead. And it becomes a duel between Kobaragi and Sugimoto. Kobaragi just barely manages to pull out in front and wins. There's a nice little scene where Sugimoto doesn't realize that he actually lost. But he eventually does accept it. Imaizumi kind of tries to comfort him, and he's like, dude, it's okay, I lost. And Kobaragi has been selected to be as a member of the final member of their inter-high team. Danchiku is being left behind because naturally he didn't actually place in that race.
Right.
And so we kind of cut to a scene at a university. We find out that Arakita and Kinjo are going to the same university, and they're still in the same biking club. Anyway, that doesn't matter. We cut back to Kobaragi and Onoda. They're on some one-on-one training, and Kobaragi has some issues with Onoda because Onoda is not that, he's still kind of very weak and passive, but he discovers that Onoda really is just a monster at climbing. And we discover that next year's Inner High will have a slope that's twice as big as last year. So naturally, Onoda is going to be pivotal to their strategy.
Right.
Cool. So, what were your impressions, Matt?
Well, I guess my big issue is that they never addressed what Teshima was thinking. I know we've been talking about this for weeks. But it really frustrated me because the logic that we came to last week was saying, like, okay, so what's going to happen after this race is Sugimoto's going to win. Teshima's going to explain how he knew all along that Sugimoto would win, and that's why he promised the other two that he would put him on the team, because he needed to motivate them to make it a good race so that Sugimoto could evolve or whatever.
Right.
But that's not what happened. All that happened is that, Sugimoto got second and Kobaragi won. And so they said, like, well, I only said that if the two of you got first and second, I'd let you on the team. So since Sugimoto beat Danchiku by a couple meters, Kobaragi has to be on the team, and I don't have to have a hard conversation with Aoyagi or something. But they don't even take it that far. Like, he never admits... there's no cut to a scene of Teshima being like, I don't know what I would have done if they'd won. Like, some way of admitting that was a stupid plan that almost backfired that
right.
He would have had to back out of.
He's going along with it, like, way too easily. Just like, oh, okay, well, I guess cool. I guess that worked out for us. Like, cool, awesome. So, Sugimoto got second, so I have an excuse just to put Kobaragi on the team now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it. And what was the point of making such a big deal of them both being on the team when immediately after he wins, they're like, "You're fine with Donshiku not being on the team, right?" And he's like, "Yup."
Like, yeah, I'm cool with it, whatever.
And like, then why was it a big deal in the first place?
Yeah, okay, so I just want to point out something. I've been hyping this up for a while. There has been, between you and me, there was a line that absolutely blew me away in this episode, in all the wrong ways.
Okay.
I forget who actually said it. I believe it was a Maizumi.
Okay.
But because I think he's explaining to Onoda about why Kobaragi and Donshiku have a major weakness against Sugimoto. And this is the exact quote here. "Since the SS members are determined through racing, they've never understood what it's like to race with friends. I have never seen a single issue in this series ever be resolved by anything but a race."
Yeah, exactly. Like, what does that have to do with anything?
Not only that, immediately afterwards, as Kobaragi and Donshiku are racing together, Donshiku, like, valiantly pushes Kobaragi forward and says, "It's okay, buddy, you take this one."
Yeah,
like a friend would do.
Exactly, because they're friends.
Because they are friends.
Yeah, like, what gets me is that, yeah, everyone competes to be on the Inter-High team. Like,
Right. This is a race right now to determine who's on the Inter-High team.
Yeah, I mean, that happened in the first season at the training camp when Imaizumi himself competed against Teshima.
Right.
To be on the team.
Teshima, right now, you were kicked off the team or off the Inter-High squad.
Yeah.
Because you lost a race. You can't just back off on that now and say, they only know racing, they don't know friendship. Racing is all that matters to you people.
Yeah, also, like, I don't totally understand why Sugimoto is racing with the power of friendship. Like, is his relationship with his brother really that substantively different that it affects his racing?
Right, like, it's like, oh, he has to live up to the expectations of his brother because he's not a very good racer, but he needs to impress his brother, and so...
I don't know if there was even that much logic.
I feel like I think that they said something along that line, because, like, Sugimoto has a bit of an internal monologue there, talking about, like, it's like, I've never actually been that great, but, my brother has always thought I was, basically thought I was the son, and so, I kind of have to live up to that for him. Like, yeah. I'm pretty sure he had, like, a little internal monologue.
Yeah, it didn't leave much of an impression, though.
Right, and that is...
But, yeah, Donshiku did push Kobaragi forward, and there was one line I wrote down from that where he said, "Issa," which I guess is Kobaragi's given name, right. "I want to see you frolic like a child." What does that mean? And what a weird thing for a 16-year-old boy to say to another
a 16-year-old boy.
Yeah, like, I just feel like that's not something people say. Like, hey man, I just really want to see you frolic.
Oh, like a child. It's like, I guess I can see what's going on there. He really wants to see that, that sort of boisterous youth in him. Like, yeah, because he's that excited. There was another thing I was thinking about watching this episode, which was, there was this misunderstanding between Onoda and Kobaragi, because Kobaragi didn't there was kind of this joke that Kobaragi didn't recognize Onoda because he was being all wimpy. He wasn't what he was expecting. Kobaragi saw Onoda at the Inter-High the previous year. The entire reason he came to Sohoku was because he saw the Inter-High. He was specifically inspired by Onoda. How does he not know what Onoda's like?
Yeah, and I mean, that carries over to the end of the episode, where he gets frustrated because Onoda was, like, not masculine enough or something when he came to pass a message at his class, and he was visibly upset with Onoda, thinking to himself, why is Onoda so undignified? That's like what he thought I liked. He's like, oh, he's not a dignified senior. Like,
right.
Who, I mean, I guess I just don't, I don't understand, but for him to be visibly upset and take it out on Onoda that he's not a dignified senior.
Right. And it's just like...
It seemed cheap. It seemed made up.
Because it's like because we have to have the scene showing like no, Onoda's actually really good. You know, he wins over Kobaragi in the end through his fast climbing because that's really all there is to it. There is one other. I don't want to be like super negative about it. I do want to point out I did kind of like the fact that Sugimoto didn't realize he had lost. And it's kind of, but it's more on the basis that how has nobody ever realized that they've never lost before when it's that close?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like why is he the first person in this show? Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
like they, all the time they have these sprints where you win by like half a tire length, and they were like, "I know I lost." Like,
it's like no,
would you really be looking at the other guy and able to tell?
Yeah, like exactly. It's like I did kind of appreciate that we had kind of they didn't earn it because who cares about Sugimoto, but I did appreciate the fact that they tried to have a dramatic scene based around that.
Well, can I ask you one? Well, I think we have two more things before we move on.
Okay.
The first being, why didn't they just wait until the training camp? Like, clearly, that's the thing. Teshima didn't. Maybe I guess he said this was like for the 6th slot in the team, but he didn't have to say that, and he could easily have said that was too close. It could have gone either way. Like
Kobaragi specifically mentions, like, if this had been like just a couple meters shorter, like Sugimoto would have won. And it's like, why are you just picking your team based off of just this single race?
I know, it seems like really bad leadership where you make a decision that monumental based, and there were so many influencing factors. Like you're not putting them in an environment where they're independent. Sugimoto raced against them for the most part when they were as a team, and he was by himself. They never addressed that. They never addressed the fact that Onoda tries to address the fact, but they don't acknowledge it as legitimate that last year they didn't pick a team until the training camp. So what's the reasoning for having to do it all now?
Because they say it's like, oh, well, because I want to make sure that we get an inner high team prepared now so that we can focus on training for it. But at the same time, you're not going to be doing any different training because, I mean, I'm sorry to say you're riding bikes. There's not really any sort of different training you can do right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, they want to work as a team of 6 and work on their teamwork. Yeah.
I've never really bought the whole like we ride as a team thing. But anyway.
And that's the thing. I don't see why it has to be those 6, because what happens when one of you gets injured before the inner high? Why wouldn't you train as a group of 8 and then have 2 people that are, designated as subs after the training camp, but the 8 of you practice together because it could be any 6 of the 8 of you if people get injured.
Yeah,
that seems like something people would do in order to be prepared and not have someone just show up on the team. If Onoda gets injured the week before the race and they just put Sugimoto on the team and he hasn't worked with them at all, that's a disaster. No real team would do this. That's what gets me.
Yeah, no, I get that.
The last thing I want to say about this episode, and we need to move on, is that I don't hate Yowapeda. I wish it could be more than it is. But I did have this moment in the episode when we cut to college and we saw Arakita and Kinjo together.
Right.
And they had a little moment talking about how they're going to race together for their college. And I thought, you know what? I'd rather watch that show.
It's more interesting because we have Kinjo, who we've seen as being the stoic leader. All of a sudden now we have to see him again as a newbie.
Yeah.
It's a more interesting aspect, and it's something that Ice Shield 21 implied with its ending, and that was kind of an interesting twist, kind of having all these characters separated at different universities and kind of have to rebuild themselves. I'd like to see a story like that, so I'm with you on that. There was something more interesting there, rather than just the only information we get from that being, hey, Hakone's training really hard right now.
Oh, yeah, I know. As opposed to what?
As opposed to before, it's like we didn't even get into, you didn't even hint at any sort of specific training. It's just, they're training hard now.
Cool.
But we need to move on. So, speaking of people who are training really hard, would you like to move on to All Out?
Sure.
Okay, so this episode we get a little bit more resolution on as to what happened during that senior meeting during with the third years. We find out that Matsuo has not actually been giving his all, and he doesn't. Basically, his philosophy is, look, guys, we have no real certainty that we're going to make it to Hanazono because we really just started this, and our time is almost up. Maybe we should just be focusing on training up the new team so that they can do it. But then we get cut back to the game, and we basically what we find is Jinko is holding off Rion pretty well. Rion they managed to do a kick into a touch, and Rion tries to fake them out, but Jinko manages to kind of collect themselves in time. We have this whole situation with Sekizan trying to basically do everything on his own because he's desperately trying to impress Matsuo, and Hachi kind of calls him out because he's not thinking enough about the actual game. He's kind of he's kind of flying off the handle almost and doing basically kind of crazy things that nobody else would do. And so after that, Sekizan tries to collect himself a little bit more, and Hachi manages to score a try. Ryoan is kind of starting to get a little flustered, like, hey, I thought these guys were supposed to be the crap team, and yet why is our second string kind of flailing up against them? And that's kind of where the episode ends.
Right.
So I thought this was a pretty solid episode, as most of All Out has tended to be. Mm-hmm. It is starting to run into the problem of Matsuo has not really been that important of a character up until now. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of weird that all of a sudden we're kind of trying to put him in this position of this is the guy that Sekizan really needs to push, this is the guy who he needs to impress, when honestly I think that role would have been better suited for Hachi.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's episode 24, guys.
Right.
Why is Matsuo gonna be the central focus? We barely saw Gion. Right. And this has been our one complaint. It's tough when you have a cast of 25 or 30 students on the main team.
Right.
There is a temptation. You do want to have a developed and broadcast. Not to mention everyone on all the other teams that you also have to develop. So it means you go pretty wide but pretty shallow.
Right.
But yeah, I don't understand. I wish that this plot had happened with someone you'd had a little more establishment with. It was also frustrating that clearly there's a lot more going on, but they're just gonna... There wasn't much to really dig into.
They're kind of blowing past it a lot.
Yeah, so I think the most important line from that whole confrontation was Matsuo saying, "Oh, well, I can't go to college anymore." So, clearly something happened in his personal life. But these guys are too, they're teenagers and they're emotionally unintelligent. So they're just well, so what you're saying is you're lazy. It's oh, no, probably his, he's had some problem in his family that he's now decided he can't go to college suddenly, and that's affecting his performance. But you're just calling him lazy over and over.
Right, which, I mean, again, I actually do like this conflict because I actually really like Sekizan as a character, and I like the fact that he's a flawed captain, because he's somebody who's really struggling to be in this leadership position, and, because of that, he's trying really hard to impress this one teammate, but he's kind of losing focus of the team.
Yeah.
Or, losing focus of the game. Even though he's actually doing quite well, because there is this whole scene where he actually manages to tackle two people at once. That's a big hype moment. Mm-hmm. But then, it's immediately undermined by Hachi, who's dude, you need to calm down, okay? Mm-hmm. You are spending way too much time,
looking off the field.
Yeah, looking off the field. Because it's your heart is not in this game, and you need to, you need to get it together, man. And
yeah, the one way it was a good call, so I didn't like it because they didn't establish the relationship between Matsuo and Sekizan earlier. Right. What I did like about it was that it was a callback to the earlier episode where that first year quit.
Right.
and it totally messed Sekizan up because he wanted everyone to stay together and everyone to have fun, and he realized, there were some negative effects to the way he did things,
right?
And that he was going to lose people, and he just cannot emotionally handle losing people and having people leave his team.
It's incredibly consistent with his character, and the series has done a great job establishing that.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that it's great at establishing characters. It's spreading them just a little too thin, though.
Yeah, I agree.
And then I do also want to point out the fact I do like how the series has also kind of undermined its own hype for Mikado. Because the whole thing with Mikado was that, it's like, okay, this is the real threatening character on this team. Like, this is the guy that we're trying to, we're going to try and beat. Immediately in this episode, we see him getting thrashed by Sekizan. Again, because it's, he's not really focusing, he's kind of almost like a wild animal at this point. But, there's something in Mikado, there's this shame almost of being on the second string, because he's like, I gotta live up to this team, like, I know I'm only on the second string, but, I gotta get the first string to pay attention to me, and, like, everything is going wrong for me in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate, again, that sort of conflict there. Like, it's a story we don't get to see too much in sports anime, because, so many sports anime are only about the strongest parts of the team, and we never get enough insight into the other members. And I know I just was complaining about the fact that they're
right. It's good and bad. Like that's the thing. Like, I don't know if my hesitation about the breadth of characters is just because I want it to be a more typical sports anime, but it might lose some of what makes it special if it were more typical.
Right. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. They took a risk, and I'm glad that they did take that risk.
Yeah, me too. Because this could have just been a Gion and Iwa show.
Right.
And it's really not.
Yeah, it's really not. It's really a story about the entire team. And that's very refreshing. The problem is that when you do the entire team, you've got to... Especially when you've only got 25 episodes, and we'll hopefully get some more. We'll talk more about that during our review. But, when you've only got 25 episodes and you've got 25 characters...
Right.
It can be difficult to find focus and villain and rival characters for that entire team.
Yeah, well, luckily, it looks like in episode 25 we will see some rival characters from Rio and come out, because I imagine the way that the coach was talking, he's going to sub in some of the starters, because, just in terms of prestige, he can't let Rio and lose to some upstart school.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, we'll look forward to that, but more immediately, we'll look forward to talking about Tiger Mask. Here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Here is the segment we have been looking forward to.
Yeah, all right. So this is Tiger Mask, episode 24. It starts off with Kevin managing to liberate Tiger the Dark from Boss Man. And then Tiger the Dark intercepts Yellow Devil and immediately pins him, tears off his mask. Turns out that it's not actually the real Yellow Devil, of course. It's just that cowardly guy from the first episode who then runs off screaming or crying. Apparently, the third brought in Yellow Devil because he wanted to hype up Tiger the Dark. Whatever.
Yeah.
There are a ton of fights in this episode. So you have Ryu appearing as Dragon Young, and then getting quickly knocked out by the third. You have the third basically just waiting for people to come up and fight him, and then trashing them immediately.
Right.
The most interesting of which being Fukuwara Mask. So Fukuwara Mask manages to advance. Tiger Mask gets distracted, and Fukuwara Mask is all on his own. So he decides to fight the third. Clearly Fukuwara Mask has some history with the third, and then as they're fighting, the third recognizes the possibility of who Fukuwara Mask is. He says, Keiji, is that you? Yeah. But ultimately Fukuwara Mask is defeated by the third, and he doesn't say anything. They just sort of move on. Naito then betrays Tanahashi so that he can be the one to defeat the third, and of course he doesn't. So the third gets to the top of the pyramid first, and then Tiger Mask and Tiger the Dark are able to fight. They're going toe-to-toe, but then Kevin ambushes Tiger Mask, and Tiger the Dark is able to knock him out. So at the end of the match, Tiger the Dark has gotten to the top of the pyramid, so they're going to have a 20-minute break, and then Tiger the Dark will fight the third. Tiger the Dark has been injured in his fight with Tiger Mask, and Tiger Mask has been knocked unconscious as being rushed to the emergency room. So, Matt, what do you want to talk about?
Okay, we have a lot we want to cover. I just want to cover just one very quick thing I want to cover before we go into anything else. Why was Kevin so amazing this episode?
Yeah,
dude,
he saved the day.
Yeah, he saved the day multiple times for Tiger the Dark. He took on 3 guys for him. Still managed to climb up the stupid pyramid. And then, last minute, Kevin just rushes in with an elbow to the face to Tiger Mask for, so Tiger the Dark can get in a suplex. Like, what the heck, Kevin? Where was this? You were an unnamed joke character because your name is Kevin.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was pretty phenomenal. I mean, he's also so self-sacrificial. Like, why is he's giving everything for Tiger the Dark when in reality, after the fight with Tiger Mask, Kevin's probably in better shape than Tiger the Dark is.
Yeah, seriously, because he had to go up against Tiger Mask of all people.
Yeah.
But a couple other things I want to touch on, of course. So, I really like the ending of this episode. Like, we were talking about this off screen, or off recording.
Air.
Yeah, off air. There you go. That's the one. And a lot of times when we have good episodes of Tiger Mask, they're always kind of with the expectation that they're like, okay, this is going to be a one-off, and we're not going to get anything really solid after this. Like, not for a while. But we'll get another great animated fight later on down the line. This episode actually gives me a lot of hope for the series, like, beyond this. Because what we have is, we actually have Tiger Mask losing for once. And what I love about it, it's not against Tiger the Third. It's actually against Tiger the Dark. Because this does a lot to set up a rivalry between the two of them. Because they could have just had Tiger Mask lose against the Third, and it's like, okay, so now we have the big villain, Tiger Mask is just not that, there's this great fighter that, and he's got to work up to. But, everybody else is kind of inconsequential to him. The fact that we actually had him lose the Tiger the Dark does add to their dynamic again. That was already kind of set up earlier in this season. Because it's like, Tiger Mask isn't weaker than Tiger the Great. He's also, he's got such a long way to go if he can't even get to the fight to Tiger the Great. And that's what I really love about it. And the fact that it was against Tiger the Dark. Now we've got one win, 1 loss. End of the season, that actually adds to the climax of that. What I would think would be really gutsy, and I'm wondering if this is the direction that they're going to go, I'm wondering if Tiger the Dark is actually going to be able to beat Tiger the Great, which would actually set up Tiger the Dark as being the main villain. And that's something I really want to see.
I don't know. I mean, it ties here, and I think we need to mention the most, and I'm not actually kidding about this, interesting and important section from this was the interaction between Tiger the Great the Third, or the Third, or Tiger the Great, or whatever we're calling him, and Fukuwara Mask. Because I broke it down briefly, but I want to give it a little more detail. Effectively, what happens is Tiger Mask and Fukuwara Mask are on the second level of the pyramid. They're both able to get KOs at the same time, so they're both supposed to advance and climb up. But Tiger Mask sees that Tanahashi is in a pinch, so instead of advancing to the third stage, he runs off to help Tanahashi and stays on the second stage. Fukuwara Mask realized, hey, I'm supposed to advance, and standing right above him is Tiger the Great the Third. He knows who this person is, and there's sort of a seriousness that comes over him. He just says like, well, guess I'm doing this on my own. That's something he communicates with his body language. It's not anything he says. He just climbs up and he begins to strike at the third. And so the third sort of blows him off at first. He thinks he's a joke character. But immediately, once they start fighting, he recognizes his strength. And Fukuwara Mask kind of makes a joke about it. He's like, oh, look at me. I'm just like a regional fighter. Like, how am I fighting the GWM champ? But like I said, Tiger the Great has this moment where he recognizes a move or something, and he says, Keiji, is that you? So there's clearly a history between the two of them where he knows him and he knows his first name. So a very close and personal history. And that's, there's a lot of shots with them battling as equals. Even though Fukuwara Mask has these goofy clothing on, he's shown as very muscular, strong. There's a lot of heaviness to the lines that they use to show them as real peers. Ultimately, the third, he wins. He's able to knock out Fukuwara Mask, and he just sort of looks at him silently and then turns and walks away. But I thought it was... I want to know what your theories are from that.
Okay, so my theory... So Fukuwara Mask clearly has has a history with GWM. And this is a character detail we have never gotten before. We've never even had any sort of implication, at least as far as I'm aware, that Fukuwara Mask was anything more than just kind of this goofball who maybe had a bit of a closeness with his, just like the last couple episodes, we find out that's okay, he has a soft spot for his hometown. This guy's just kind of a goofball who's, he's always been treated as the joke character. The fact that but it does build on something that we found out before, was that, Tiger Mask realized, hey, Fukuwara Mask is actually, you're actually not a bad wrestler, but why are you playing this gag character? We don't really get an answer to that from before. We're finally getting that payoff there, because the series has gone this long without really ever breaking character for Fukuwara Mask. And now, beyond just that one little tidbit that we got, that one little seed that they planted early on, and we're finally, and it's a lot more satisfying now, just getting that implication that there's so much more to his character. And now, naturally, my assumption is that he was, in fact, he was the Yellow Devil that we found at the beginning of the series.
Yeah, I agree. And we joked about it last week.
Right.
Because we thought, we were just trying to come up with something random for Fukuwara Mask to be, but I actually think that's the best theory we have right now.
Right. Because it would also add into because there's been a small recurring thread of redemption. Not really that much, but there has always been just a bit of redemption, of a redemptive arc to some of the characters. For example, the fact that he is Tiger Mask himself is training with the original Yellow Devil. For example, that's kind of already planted in our head. Okay, you know what? These originally evil people, they can still be reformed. The entire premise of this series is that Yellow Devil is a menace who needs to be stopped. But the fact that Fukuwara Mask could possibly be him, that adds another layer to that character, because it's hey, this guy maybe did some bad crap before, maybe some horrendous stuff, but maybe he's not actually the problem. And that also adds to the dynamic between Tiger the Dark and Tiger Mask, because Tiger the Dark is so obsessed with because he doesn't actually care about GWM. He's actually falling into their philosophy. And it's showing what can happen, if you pursue this mentality. It's the whole idea, don't hunt monsters for so long, or else you'll find yourself become one.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think we're getting to the point where we've seen enough of GWM as an organization,
right?
And between Tiger Mask and Tiger the Dark, they've been exposed at a high level to enough of GWM that the Yellow Devil they're looking for, he's not out there hiding somewhere in GWM.
Right.
You know, like, they've fought all the best fighters. There's no one better than Tiger the Great III, and they're fighting him now. Like, Yellow Devil's not out there somewhere hiding. So unless Tiger the Great III is the actual Yellow Devil, which is the other possibility,
Right.
it means that the Yellow Devil they're looking for is no longer in GWM, and that's it. So I like that, and yeah, I do think it makes sense that there's a parallel with Tiger the Great III. You know, he sort of managed to rise up through the organization with either his friend or his brother or whatever relation they are, and then Yellow Devil did this thing. Yellow the Devil.
Yellow the Devil.
That's what his name probably should have been. But, you know, he did this thing, and he saw what he did to this family in the first episode, and that sort of started a thought process in him, like, maybe I'm the bad guy. You know, maybe there's a different way I should be living. And so he ended up leaving, and Tiger the Great ended up becoming the champ. So I wonder if it'll parallel sort of with, you know, one with Naoto and Takuma is sort of, you know, the two paths you can go, and also with maybe like Kevin and Takuma. Maybe there'll be a point at which Kevin is forced to recognize that, you know, GWM isn't actually going to help him out at the end, that he's only hurting people. And Takuma will say, you know, it doesn't matter. You know, so I could see some parallelism there between those two. But I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
No, I hear you. And it's kind of interesting, too, because the series the story began, maybe not the series, but the story began with Takuma being confronted by Yellow Devil, and Yellow Devil basically taunting him with, like, you need to become me, essentially. Mm-hmm. And Takuma, like, you know, it's the whole, like, descent into darkness thing. And, you know, it's a story that's been told a lot before. Mm-hmm. But what makes it interesting to me is the fact that the series has kind of been pulling the wool over our eyes this entire series. Like, because it almost works to its favor that they didn't develop Tiger the Dark quite enough before. Because there's just enough doubt because he's just a blank enough slate that we can see this transition for his character.
Yeah, we don't actually empathize with him because we don't see things from his perspective that much.
Right. And, like, the fact that really all we've seen of him is, like, it lends itself well because, you know, he had that discussion with Tiger Mask before about, like, you know, he flat out said, like, I don't care about GWM. I don't care what other wrestlers were doing. Like, I don't think that they're wrong for that. Mm-hmm. But, like, and right there we have the potential for now, like, because neither one of them understand who the other is. Like, that adds a lot more to their conflict for when they when they inevitably have to find out who they are.
Because I think eventually they're going to realize, like, oh, you're my friend from back then. But I think they'll reveal it before the end of the show.
Right.
And I think they'll both decide it doesn't matter. Like, you're not who you used to be. You know, You're still the enemy. You're still between me and my goal.
But I do feel like at the very end, what Naoto's going to have to learn is that, like, if he really wants to be Tiger Mask, like, you know, like what Tiger Mask represents, is that because he himself needs to get over his hatred of Yellow Devil. And I think that's what makes it interesting that Fukuwara Mask might have been the Yellow Devil, because they become friends. Mm-hmm. And, like, the fact that he's actually befriended the man that he's been hunting for so long, and the fact that Takuma never actually got that by getting involved in GWM, because he got involved with GWM, he could never actually have that experience. A lot of this is, a lot of our excitement, though, is kind of resting on the idea that Fukuwara Mask was the original Yellow Devil.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be something there. Like, they gave us too much this episode for there to be nothing there. Like, there's something between those two characters, and, I mean, there have been a lot of very bad episodes of Tiger Mask. Like, I am not here to defend Tiger Mask as an enterprise. A lot of it is garbage. But if you can ignore large swaths of the show and take the good bits, it does actually add up to some interesting stuff here.
There is actually, like, what came from this episode was the promise of an actually interesting story. And that was never something I imagined from Tiger Mask for the past 2 seasons.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, so hopefully this last third of the show can really pull something together, and it's possible that they have the animation budget to do it, but no, I mean, like, who are we kidding? They don't.
Before we move on, though, there is just one other little interesting tidbit that we didn't really touch on. The fact that Tiger Mask is being rushed to the hospital, or being rushed to, like, the doctors... the fact that means that Tiger Mask is probably going to get the mask removed in front of Ruri, which does add another layer to the dynamic of Tiger Mask, which I also appreciate. The fact that Ruri might actually have to learn, like, Naoto's actually going to have to deal with the fact that the woman he's in love with is going to know who he is.
Yeah. At the same time, like, that was such of a freaking throwaway plot between him and Ruri.
I understand that. What might be interesting about that, though, is that Ruri does know who Tiger the Dark is, and once it comes out that Tiger Mask, once it comes out that she knows who Tiger Mask is, and she knows the relationship between Takuma and the old man, like...
someone will put the pieces together.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's interesting to me about that. Yeah, okay. I don't care. I mean, it is a little interesting that now Naoto might actually have to... Like, now that she knows that he's Tiger Mask, but it's like, really all that does is resolve a conflict that didn't need to be there. I mean, I don't particularly care. Anyway, we have gone on way too long on Tiger Mask.
I think we went on just long enough, actually.
That's fair. We were both really excited about it. So something we are less excited about, of course, is Minami Kamakura High School Girls Cycling Club. Thankfully, this was the final episode.
Yeah.
Okay. So the girls are in a meeting with the principal, and the principal explains to them that they've done a lot, but they have not done enough yet to justify the club. The girls try and theorize around for a little bit, and they think that it's because they don't have enough members. Thankfully, that's kind of thrown away as a joke. I kind of actually laughed a little bit. But what they... then they find out through Shiki, their teacher... Apparently, Shiki overheard Sandy talking with somebody over the phone, and she's apparently going to have to go back to America, like, a lot sooner than they thought. And so the girls, very saddened by this news, because Sandy's that important of a character.
Yeah, they met, like, yesterday.
They decide to take her on one big, last, memorable ride.
Sure.
And so they decide to take her to Mount Fuji, which... I'm surprised it took them this long, but I guess they wanted to save Mount Fuji for their climax of the show, because that's the big location in Kamakura. Fine, whatever. So they ride for a while, and then out of nowhere, Sandy decides she wants to have a race to the second station on Mount Fuji, and the girls agree because, hey, it's her last ride, she gets to do what she wants. Anyway, when they get to the second station, they find out that the principal has been hiding out there, and she gives them the approval for the club. And I want to save that for the actual discussion of the episode as to why.
Yeah.
Anyway, we find out as well that, the girls start crying because it's like, oh, Sandy, you're going to have to go away forever, and we love you and we miss you. And then Sandy's like, oh, I'm only going home for a week. Lols, end of episode.
Yeah, pretty much.
End of series.
Yeah, end of show.
Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, Well, Matt, why don't you just give me your impressions first? Did it suck?
Oh, gosh, yes, of course. Yes, it was awful. I mean, it wasn't the worst episode of this show, but that's a low bar.
Yeah, that's a pretty low bar to limbo under, as it were. So, what I want to discuss... First of all, for some reason, the principal hiding at the second station. What I loved the most, though, more than anything, was her reasoning for why she wasn't letting the girls have the club.
Yeah.
So, apparently, what she saw from them was that they had realized the joy of biking, and that's what they were missing. Because, apparently... They were too obsessed with getting the results that they lost sight of what it really meant to be a part of a cycling club.
And you're like, but you told us.
You told them to get the results.
Yeah, do the things.
Do the things and get the results. And it just blows my mind that they have the audacity to imply that these girls have been working hard at anything. Yeah, only to then pull away. It's like, oh, you girls have been working so hard that you forgot what it means to truly be in the club. These girls have done absolutely nothing but just ride bikes around town.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what about this? And also, they ended it with a race. It wasn't like the joy of cycling. It was a competition to get the results of winning. Like, how did that prove that they learned joy
because
and friendship?
Hiromi said that she had fun doing it.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like, well, I was here hiding out, and I heard you say the word fun, so now you're a club.
Congratulations!
What got me, of course, is everyone immediately accepting her reasoning. Being like, oh, she's right. We needed to discover joy and friendship. We never did that.
We never did that, despite the fact that's all the series has been!
Exactly. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you guys went on a trip last time on a long ride, or, oh gosh, I just used that word. But, so you went on this day trip. What was that other than, how, that wasn't getting results. That was going on a ride and looking, they were going on a ride together and looking at windmills. Like, how is that not the joy of cycling?
Like that's... It's like, how can you say it's like, oh, you guys were just too obsessed with getting those results, taking those leisurely rides around town?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
so the other big plot point here was Shiki overhearing Sandy talking in English, which surprisingly good English. I have to say.
Yeah, you know what? I give them credit for making that entire conversation in at least attempted English.
Oh, no, like, that's the thing. The grammar wasn't awful. It was just, clearly it was not spoken by a native English speaker.
Of course.
But, which we knew. But other than that, it was good.
Yeah.
The English was good. The English was fine. It wasn't illogical. But anyway, so Shiki overhears Sandy talking about going home to see her grandma or whatever, and she just hides behind a wall and then tells all the girls that I overheard Sandy say she's moving to America. Like, why wouldn't you ask literally one question? Like, what kind of a teacher is just like, well, I overheard someone speaking in a language I'm not that comfortable with, and I'm pretty sure she said she's moving to America.
I'm pretty sure she said she's going away forever.
Yeah, exactly.
It's something I just, like... The funny thing was, as soon as that section ended, I actually thought to myself, she's listening to this entire conversation in English. Are we supposed to just buy the fact that she understood her perfectly? And the answer to that question was actually no.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I love/hate the fact that this show always brings up problems that they can resolve immediately just through a simple conversation.
Right. Like, just like, if you girls had just talked to her or asked her about it. I also want to point out the fact that the reason Sandy didn't want to bring it up was because she didn't see it was important. You didn't think it was important to tell your friends you were going to be gone for about a week?
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess that was fine with me just because she's like, well, I mean, whatever, I'm just taking a week off.
Right. I don't know. It seems like to me that it would have just come off. Like, she doesn't have to make it like a big thing. She just, just like as they're riding around town, it's like, oh, hey, I'm going on vacation next week to America. Just, I thought you guys would like know. I thought that I'm excited. Like, whatever.
Yeah, but of course, like, that's the conflict. That is literally the conflict that the show ends on, is that they misunderstood English one time.
And the fact that that's actually how the series ends.
Exactly. So they're like, oh, looks like you're not moving, so we can ride together, so let's ride bikes, the end. Matt, you did forget to include one important plot point, though.
Oh, my bad. What was that?
AOP. How did their journey resolve?
Did it? They just sort of ended. Which is kind of how this show ended, I guess, to be fair.
Yeah. My favorite part from the AOP was that they had this like nostalgic look over how much fun they had on their journey through Kamakura. It's been like 2 episodes, preceded by like 9 episodes of them in a bike shop being like, "What are helmets?" Like, that was not a great journey you can look back on of how much you've grown. It was like figuring out what pedaling is and then hawking some merch.
Not just merch, like just some not even fast food, but you're just hawking food at a cafe. You're advertising a cafe here, okay, exactly. Guys? Like, you didn't have this wonderful experience. Well, maybe you had like a nice time. Like, I'm not arguing that. But
sure, but it was like an afternoon.
It's like you had a pleasant afternoon. Okay, like, don't tell me that you guys had just like this incredible journey.
I know it was so good.
And just, oh my god, this show. I'm gonna be fair to Long Riders here. Long Riders at least had an implication of finality. Like, we had a look back. We had this whole, like, yeah, you know what? I had this wonderful time writing. I learned, like, I had new experiences. And you know what? They actually did ride around a lot. We got to see... So we got the sense of an actual journey. Now, the journey sucked. It was boring. But at the very least, we got at least the idea that they at least traveled a distance. These girls feel like they never left their neighborhood.
All right.
And we're trying to... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. It didn't do much. I think we'll probably get together some of our more final thoughts on the review episode. So
right.
So the last thing we're going to do is briefly talk through Usakame, which was the final season, quote-unquote, of Teekyu.
Right. Correct.
So this was a spin-off where they focused on the girls of Usakame High School, who was another, like, the other tennis team that they occasionally went and visited in the show during Teekyu. And so this is told from their perspective. The episodes are slightly longer. They don't talk as fast. The animation is very different. It's much more subdued and soft toned. And there's a lot fewer crazy hijinks. It's a much more standard show, even though it's still very short. So the plot is basically they have these 4 girls on a team, and Kurumi and Kayako are both sort of competing with each other in order to see who will be their senpai Ayako's teammate for the inter-high, who will play doubles with her, and they're both sort of obsessed with Ayako, and they both want to play doubles with her, so they spar, and eventually, at the end of the show, Kayako becomes the future captain, and she becomes Ayako's partner at the inter-high. In the meantime, they have lots of little day trips and adventures and a few jokes. They meet up with the Teekyu girls, and then they look happily into their future playing tennis together for what limited time they have left.
Right.
So it was a 12-episode show with mini episodes. They were about 3.5 minutes long. Were there any particular episodes that stuck out to you, man?
I'm sorry to say, the one that most stuck out to me was the one where they had, like, where the episode that was based around the TQ cast showing up.
Mm-hmm.
I got a pretty big laugh out of the fact that the TQ girls mentioned that it was a lot easier to speak in this series.
Yeah, because they actually spoke at a normal cadence.
Right. Yeah, like, because they weren't speaking like in rapid fire. So
right.
That was kind of the major one. I thought it was it was also kind of weird in that episode, though, that they introduced this character. I didn't catch her name. She didn't really show up very often, but it was like the episode was really her introduction. She's kind of like a friend of the teacher, and I didn't really...
Yeah, they had a lot of random friends who showed up for one episode of an already incredibly short show.
Right.
And I don't know why.
Yeah, I was not super big on the show, to be honest. I think you enjoyed this one a little bit more than I did.
I did, mostly because I appreciated the pace. I thought it told a story over 12 episodes, which is something that Teekyu never does, which is fine because that's not what Teekyu's trying to do. This did have some development. It had like the goofy jokes, but it wasn't insane. Like people didn't transform at a moment's notice. They did goofy stuff. They had some recurring jokes. Like, instead of practicing tennis, they would practice doing the death requiem, where they would try to kill someone with a tennis racket. And, and they would have other stuff like Kayako deciding to impersonate a printer, or she would keep trying to recruit an adult man onto the team named Sekiguchi-san. And so there were a couple funny recurring jokes, but it never reached the heights of comedy that Teekyu did at its best moments. There were very few points where you were actually laughing. The funniest points in the show, like you mentioned, were when the girls from Teekyu showed up again and redid their jokes. So that sort of illustrates the issues with the show. I thought the ending was fine and pleasant.
I think I can kind of appreciate it on a level of... So the problem with the Takamiya Nasano Desu is that it was a spinoff, but it was basically just another season of Teekyu. So this actually does feel like a proper spinoff of Teekyu. Like it's not just like it's not like just a new series that is effectively just Teekyu, just with a new set of girls. And so I guess I can kind of appreciate it on that aspect. It still has elements of Teekyu, like it's still kind of got the absurdist humor. But it actually does feel pretty distinct from Teekyu. I think part of me was a little off-put by the fact Teekyu got away with doing blatant advertising in their episodes because they treat it as such like a non-issue. It's just like, oh yeah, by the way, buy the Blu-ray, it's out now. Whenever they just needed to fill in a couple seconds with a joke. Whereas, I guess, I don't know, I was really turned off, I guess, by the fact, so the very first episode ends with a live-action with a live-action pop idol performance of the ending theme.
Yeah.
And then the second episode ends with, the main voice actress of the main girl, basically being like, hey guys, I voiced the girl. I'm also in the pop idol group that does the show. Buy the Blu-rays, please.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know, it kind of, I guess what I really enjoyed about TQ was its very anarchic nature, and this did feel like, it struck me as the type of series that was trying to kind of cash in on the TQ theme, but not really, but felt like a little bit more like I was being sold to, and I think that kind of turned me off of it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wasn't sure quite how to take it because it was trying to both be a sincere story about, high school days among friends and also have these stupid jokes and also sell this pop idol merch and also be about TQ. So it never really felt like it was sure what it was or why it existed.
Right.
It was perfectly pleasant. I liked it better than Nasano Desu, but yeah, it's. I don't think it's something I would revisit the way that I would revisit some of the highlights of TQ.
I mean, I guess really, if you're really into TQ, I mean, it'll kill another half hour of your day if you want to.
Sure.
Watch
No.
it.
Yeah. This is for TQ completionists.
Right.
Which is not a hard thing to be.
And real quick, I just want to point out, I do believe that if the series was not as connected to TQ, I think I would have actually enjoyed it more if this was just kind of its own thing. Because then I feel like I could at least put up with the moments where they're trying to sell it. Tried to sell to me, because then it's like, okay, yeah, here we gotta do our...
This is.
It's just what this is. But when it's connected to TQ, and it's like, I kind of like TQ almost as this sort of almost as this Marx Brothers type comedy that's almost so that's so removed from any pretense. And it's like, yeah, when you kind of when you're trying to sell that to me now, guys, it kind of turns me off. But and I guess it's because they didn't go all the way with the TQ humor, but I don't know. I guess I just really want another season of Teekyu.
Don't we all? All right. I think that's all the time we have this week, Matt.
Yep, I do believe that is so. Well, thanks as always for joining me, Matt. I always appreciate it whenever you can join me on my show.
Well, thanks for having me as your guest. I'll talk to you very soon.
Cool beans. On your way out, can you please hit the credits?
My pleasure.
Our logo design is by James Ratcliffe. The theme music is Fly High by Burnout Syndromes, covered and performed by Luke Bartka. You can follow KoshienCast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and our email is kosiencast@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We will be back next week with the best and worst from the world of sports anime, and until then, keep training.